Hello guys, I'm Tom, and today we will find out who Deborah is. One of the most terrifying, monstrous, and disturbing characters to ever lurk in the darkness is, without a doubt, Deborah. Her mere presence is enough to make any corner of the room fill with a deadly chill. Imagine an entity whose human form has been completely distorted by the touch of the supernatural. A creature whose body has not only been possessed, but transformed into a living nightmare. Deborah's story is intertwined with the deepest layers of horror, a blend of human suffering and demonic corruption that defies all logic. That is why, in this video, I will explain in detail the story and origins of Deborah. To do so, I will summarize her story in the movie, then I will talk about her physical appearance, her personality, and her incredible abilities and known weaknesses. Deborah is a woman who has lived a life marked by personal tragedies and has battled Alzheimer's disease for years. She started her life as a young woman who got married and soon after lost her husband. Despite this painful loss, she managed to raise her daughter, Sarah, and build a successful business. However, the disease began to severely affect her daily life. Although she is aware of her condition, she knows there is no cure for it, leading her to live in a constant internal struggle. Then we meet a young student named Mia, who decides to embark on what seems to be a simple recording project. She and her team head to the home of a woman named Deborah, who suffers from Alzheimer's. What could go wrong, right? But that's where we're mistaken. What starts as a simple recording turns into a descent into a spiral of terror. At first, Deborah didn't want anyone near her, but as is often the case in these stories, desperation can change anyone's perspective, and she eventually allows the students into her home. Now, the atmosphere starts to feel heavy, as if we already know that something dark is lurking in the shadows of that house. Mia begins talking about Alzheimer's, a disease that steals memories and lives, and Deborah's story unfolds before us. A woman who lost her husband, who had to raise her daughter alone, yet still managed to build a successful business. However, the disease slowly consumes her, like a fog erasing her consciousness. She knows this, but she is facing something even more terrifying, the certainty that there is no cure for her condition. This is when the team starts installing cameras, but what seemed like a simple recording turns into a nightmare. Suddenly, Deborah's scream, accusing one of the cameramen of stealing her shovel, sends chills down their spines. She doesn't just scream, she collapses, crying over something she can't understand, something her mind can no longer retain. And that is when the rules of reality begin to crumble, and darkness starts to take shape. And what happens when the students try to help her? Well, she becomes even more dangerous. The same woman who once seemed so fragile is now hurting herself, tearing herself apart. It's as if evil has taken over her body, as if something is controlling her. When they find her in the hospital, things only get worse. Her daughter, Sarah, worried, tells them that her mother is getting worse. But what follows is beyond anything anyone could have imagined. The evil manifests subtly yet terrifyingly. Mia and the others hear Deborah speaking in a voice that shouldn't be hers, repeating incomprehensible phrases while staring into the mirror. The mirror, that surface that reflects what we are, but sometimes reveals what we are not. And then, Deborah starts attacking them. With no reason, no warning, as if her mind has been taken over by something much more sinister. When the students find Deborah in the forest, digging with a shovel, she is not just looking for something. No, she is digging a hole, and although her body is there, her soul seems to be somewhere else, lost in the darkness. They manage to calm her down, but something feels off. Something is very wrong. The snake scene, that snake that appears out of nowhere near Deborah, is a clear symbol. What does it mean? It feels like an omen of what is to come. And Deborah's paintings, those strange artworks that seem to depict a ghost in the window, reveal an even more disturbing truth. There is something, someone, or perhaps nothing on the other side of that window. Something that cannot be explained, but can be felt, perceived, like a distant echo resonating in our minds. And what happens when Mia and the others decide to stay for the money? Here comes the key moment. How much would you charge to take care of a person who is no longer themselves? How much fear are you willing to endure for a price? The students, scared, demand more money, and Mia, of course, agrees. It's as if they are trapped in a snare that is slowly closing around them, and there is no way out. When Deborah, completely out of control, gets out of bed in the middle of the night, we already know that the worst is yet to come. The sound of the alarm clock that no one set, the strange noises, and then the climax. Deborah appearing in the attic completely naked, speaking in a voice that no longer sounds human. What follows, guys, is like a jolt of electricity. The machine sparking and electrocuting Deborah marks the final collapse of everything that was happening. Later, the group, deeply intrigued by the strange events surrounding Deborah, begins reviewing the audio recordings from a video camera. As they carefully listen to one of the recordings, they clearly hear a chilling phrase, "The eternal serpent will set you free." Strangely, the audio is in French, but Sarah, one of the girls, realizes something terrifying. Her mother doesn't speak French. This only deepens the mystery, as the recording comes from the video they took when Deborah was in the attic. As they investigate further, the group finds papers belonging to Deborah. On the computer, they discover that these documents are connected to a disturbing case, a pediatrician named Henry, who had abused several young girls. Sarah remembers a documentary about this case, so they decide to watch it. In the documentary, they learn that the murdered girls had a serpent symbol drawn on their foreheads, as well as traces of snake venom in their blood. It turns out that all of this is tied to an ancient ritual known as the Monniken of Blood, in which girls, referred to as bleeding flowers, were sacrificed at the onset of their first menstruation. Their blood was offered to demons in exchange for immortality. The documentary reveals that, toward the end of his life, the pediatrician attempted to perform the ritual in a desperate bid for immortality. However, he failed to complete it. Horrified, the group seeks out Deborah to confront her about the matter, and she reveals something even more chilling. He's dead. Murdered. And this is where things get even stranger. At that moment, Deborah starts feeling sick and rushes to the bathroom. When the girls follow her, they find her collapsed on the floor, vomiting, but what she expels are snakes covered in sand. The tension escalates. After taking her to the hospital, speculation begins to rise among the group. Could Deborah be involved in the murders of the girls? Or is she being controlled by something much darker? The theory starts to gain traction, but just then, a loud noise outside grabs their attention. Looking out the window, they see Harry, the neighbor, firing a shotgun at his own car. When they manage to call the police, they arrest Harry. But what happens next will leave them frozen in fear. Upon arriving at the hospital, they discover that Deborah is no longer in her room. Moments later, security footage shows a woman sobbing uncontrollably over her missing daughter. And in the video, it's Deborah who took her. The group frantically searches the hospital for Deborah with no success, but they finally find her in a dark room, staring at the wall while holding the child. As they bring her back to her bed, the situation worsens. The priest Sarah contacts tells her that he cannot help with something so unnatural. Desperate, the group seeks out a doctor named Chiver, who tells them about cursed parasites, malevolent entities that take over human bodies to seek revenge or cause harm. These types of demons typically possess weak individuals, especially children, and in some cases, like Deborah's, they take control of the sick. The only way to remove them is through an extraction process, but it is extremely painful and lengthy. The story reaches its climax when Harry, in a desperate attempt to stop whatever is happening, tries to suffocate Deborah with a pillow. At that moment, the television screen flickers violently, the cameras start to malfunction, and a surge of energy sends the TV crashing down on Harry, leaving him severely injured. Deborah, seemingly possessed, continues her frantic escape, but her fate is about to be sealed. When Sarah discovers that her mother is fully possessed by the demon, the tension peaks. This is when they find Deborah, with a monstrous mouth, trying to devour a young girl suffering from cancer, whom she had kidnapped from the hospital. The girl also appears to be in some sort of trance, as previously mentioned. Cursed parasites tend to possess children or very sick individuals like Deborah more easily. After several attempts to stop her, including a couple of gunshots, they finally manage to inject her with a substance that seems to calm her. However, the demon inside her does not give up so easily. Sarah and the others must face one last battle, and after a final struggle of fire and sacrifice, they finally manage to subdue her. But the horror does not end there. Although the news reports reveal that the kidnapped girl has survived, Deborah, the one who had been possessed, ends up in a vegetative state, unable to walk or speak. The story concludes with an interview with the girl, now healthy, but her final smile sends a chill down our spines, leaving us with more questions than answers. And now that we've thoroughly covered her story, I want to talk to you about Deborah's physical appearance, what we know about her personality and behavior, as well as explain her incredible abilities and how to survive and defeat this creature. Deborah is a woman who seems to be trapped between the human and the demonic, a struggle that is reflected in her physical appearance as the story progresses. At first, Deborah appears to be an ordinary woman with a serene demeanor, someone who could easily go unnoticed at first glance. She has a delicate face, with an expression that conveys calmness, though not entirely innocence. Her dark hair is usually tied back, giving her a more sober and serious appearance. However, as the story unfolds and she begins to fall under the influence of demonic possession, her appearance undergoes unsettling changes. As the possession takes hold of her, her face transforms, taking on a more disturbing aura. Her skin, which initially looks normal, starts to turn pale and dull, with a sickly tone that reflects the demonic influence. Her gaze becomes emptier and more lost, as if she is no longer fully aware of her surroundings, revealing the internal battle between her humanity and the demon possessing her. As the possession intensifies, her body also undergoes transformations. In a key scene, her abdomen and face appear to swell and distort unnaturally, almost as if something is trying to break free from inside her. In several scenes, she is shown vomiting snakes, a chilling manifestation of the demon's control over her body. This transformation affects not only her physical appearance, but also her behavior. She becomes erratic, and her movements turn uncoordinated and tremulous. One of the most striking features of Deborah by the end of the movie is her mouth. This part of her body transforms into something no longer human. Her jaw becomes grotesquely distorted, growing unnaturally large, almost as if the force of the possession is warping her entire face. Her mouth opens unnaturally wide in a macabre gesture, as if ready to devour her victim, reinforcing the idea that the demon is taking full control. Deborah is a compassionate yet fragile woman. She is shown to be affectionate and caring toward those around her, especially towards Sarah's mother. However, her interactions with others are marked by a constant sense of confusion and inexplicable fears. This could indicate that something was already wrong with her psyche before the possession, perhaps linked to trauma or guilt over her involvement in demonic rituals. Though this aspect is not deeply explored, her behavior before becoming possessed suggests that she was already unstable, which leads others to suspect that something dark is about to happen to her. However, she does not seem fully aware of what is happening around her, often appearing to be a victim of her own fears and emotions, until the possession finally takes control. When the demon fully takes over Deborah, her personality changes drastically. The possession turns her into an aggressive, manipulative, and extremely dangerous being. She is no longer the woman she once was. Her body and mind are entirely dominated by a malevolent entity. Her erratic behaviors are a direct manifestation of the demonic influence over her. As the demon gains more power, her demeanor becomes colder and more calculating, showing complete disregard for others. One of the most terrifying aspects of her behavior is her emotional manipulation. Although she seems completely lost under the demon's control, there are brief moments when Deborah appears to regain some sense of herself. This happens, for example, when she calls out to her daughter in the final part of the film, displaying a mixture of desperation and suffering. This contradiction between the human woman and the demon inside her creates a deeply unsettling atmosphere, making it difficult to determine whether the real Deborah is still present or if the demon has entirely replaced her. Her aggression is reflected in the most extreme situations, such as when she begins attacking and devouring the child. Her violence appears to have no limits, and she acts without remorse, suggesting that the demon has turned her into an instrument of death. Furthermore, when she escapes from the hospital, her contempt for authority is evident as she attacks a security guard, leaving him on the ground, and continues to display extreme defiance against any attempt to stop her. Despite her violent behavior, the demon also demonstrates its ability to alter reality around Deborah, causing strange phenomena such as snakes emerging from her body or security camera malfunctions. These physical manifestations are not only part of the possession, but also symbolize the complete disintegration of her humanity. When Deborah is finally captured, her behavior remains uncontrollable, reflecting both a profound disorder and the loss of her identity. During her confrontation with the authorities and the girls, she shows no remorse or regret for her actions. On the contrary, her attitude remains disdainful, as if she is more interested in fulfilling the demon's will than in any attempt at redemption. One of the most unsettling moments occurs when, after being finally restrained, she spits on a police officer, an act that has lethal consequences. At that moment, the demon appears to still have absolute control. This reveals that even when the possession seems temporarily halted, the malevolent entity remains inside her, continuing to dictate her actions. One of the most remarkable abilities Deborah acquires after being possessed is her immense physical strength. As the possession intensifies, she becomes capable of acts of violence and destruction far beyond what an ordinary person could achieve. This power is evident when, in her possessed form, she destroys objects, breaks down doors, or attacks her victims with terrifying brutality. At various moments in the film, Deborah's strength appears to exceed human limits, such as when she effortlessly overpowers multiple men, emphasizing the physical superiority granted to her by the demon. Another dangerous ability Deborah gains is psychic manipulation. The demon has the power to alter people's perception and cause hallucinations, making its victims experience terrifying visions or nightmarish scenarios. This ability is likely tied to its capacity to instill fear in those around her. The demon possessing Deborah also has the ability to manifest physically in various forms. For example, snakes and other creatures are seen emerging from her body, suggesting a direct connection to infernal entities. This ability can also be interpreted as both an offensive and defensive mechanism, where the demon uses these manifestations to attack its victims or shield itself from those attempting to stop it. As the possession progresses, these physical manifestations become stronger and more frequent, demonstrating the demon's growing control over Deborah's body. Throughout the film, it is shown that demonic possession grants Deborah superhuman resistance to physical damage. Despite being attacked multiple times, whether with weapons or other means, she appears to recover quickly or not feel pain in a normal way. At one point, she is even shot multiple times, yet she seems largely unaffected, highlighting her immunity or at least an extreme resistance to human attacks. Beyond physical manifestations, Deborah, under the demon's control, appears capable of summoning and invoking other demonic entities. These entities manifest in various ways, primarily as snakes, which she seems to control directly, or as shadowy figures that either protect her or attack those who come too close. These summonings serve not only as a defense mechanism, but also as a means of attack, disorienting people and keeping them away from Deborah. This ability further emphasizes the full supernatural power of the demon controlling her. One of the most terrifying abilities is the demon's power to alter physical reality. On multiple occasions, security cameras and the environment itself seem to be affected by its presence, as if the demon is distorting space and time to its advantage. This could indicate a form of psychic power that allows it to subtly manipulate its surroundings to create chaos and despair among those trying to stop it. Although not explored in great detail, it can be inferred that Deborah, under the demon's control, possesses some form of regeneration or resurrection. This is suggested when she appears to recover rapidly from severe injuries, reinforcing the immortal nature of the demonic entity inhabiting her. Finally, as the possession advances, the demon possessing Deborah appears to have absolute control over her body. This is evident in the way it moves her limbs unnaturally or causes her body to behave in disturbing ways, such as altering or deforming parts of her face. This complete control over her body symbolizes Deborah's total submission to the demon residing within her. If you ever find yourself face to face with Deborah, get ready, because things are about to get creepy. Let's analyze how we could defeat her. The first thing you need to know is that possession is the center of all of Deborah's power. If we manage to free her soul from the demon possessing her, we could likely weaken her considerably. How to do this? Through exorcism rituals or spiritual methods that allow the demon to be separated from Deborah's body. But for this, we'd need to know how to recognize the demon, its symbols, and possibly require a priest or an expert in the paranormal. If you have access to sacred objects, such as crucifixes or holy water, use them. The demon seems vulnerable to religious symbols, and this could be a good start to weaken it. However, this process can be risky and must be done with caution, as the demon has the ability to manipulate the mind and perception, putting us at a huge psychological disadvantage. Deborah, under possession, has gained superhuman strength and resistance to damage. So, fighting her directly is not a good option. The best thing we can do here is to avoid physical contact at all costs. Since the demon possesses Deborah, this type of combat isn't won by strength, but by the smart use of the environment. Use your agility to stay out of her reach. Run and move quickly, using objects around you to create physical barriers. If you can, disorient the demon using noise or creating distractions. Think of it like dodging her attacks, but also using lighting to your advantage. A dark environment could make it harder for her to perceive and manipulate mentally. Deborah's possession not only makes her a physical threat, but also a mental one. The demon can induce hallucinations and manipulate our perception of reality, making us vulnerable to fear and panic. If we panic, we'll fall into its mental traps, which is exactly what the demon wants. Stay calm. If you have a strong mindset and can block out the hallucinations or fear induced by the demon, you will be able to make better decisions. Don't trust your eyes if something seems unreal or distorted, especially if the demon tries to make you see things that aren't there. Use logic to resist the manipulation. We know that the demon possessing Deborah has great physical strength and is almost immune to damage. Fight from a distance. This would be the perfect time to use weapons that don't require close combat, such as firearms or explosives. Although we know Deborah has great resistance, well-aimed attacks to specific points, like the heart or head, might be more effective. Another tactic would be to use weapons that target her spiritual weak points. As we mentioned earlier, religious symbols seem to affect her. If you have spiritual lifesavers like holy water or a crucifix, you could spray holy water on her face or hold a crucifix in front of her to force her to retreat. Deborah, under the demon's control, seems to have a physical manifestation of power, like creatures emerging from her body. Destroying the environment could be key. If you manage to destroy areas the demon uses for manifestation, such as contact surfaces, doors, or sacred elements in the surroundings, you could weaken its influence. Think of a closed environment that could isolate her or limit her access. If you have any source of fire or electricity available, it could serve as a distraction to stun her or at least make her vulnerable for a while. An enemy like Deborah is not something that can be defeated alone. Gather a team with complementary skills. You'll need someone with spiritual knowledge, another with physical abilities, and of course, someone with strategic skills. A team of people with knowledge of demonology would be ideal to attempt to exorcise or weaken the demon possessing her. Despite being capable of inflicting damage, Deborah doesn't seem to have great resistance to prolonged attacks as long as they're kept at a distance. You may need an approach of constantly striking from afar with explosives or shooting at specific areas with patience. Perhaps the demon possessing her won't give up easily, but eventually it will lose power. And that would be all we know so far about the entity known as Deborah. I had seen videos and clips about this creature a long time ago, but I never knew her story or who she was. So when I found out, I immediately made this video. But let me know your opinion in the comments. Did you already know about Deborah? Do you think a creature so monstrous and cruel could really exist? And finally, if you encountered this being, what would you do? Share your answers to these questions and your general opinion about Deborah. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you liked it, share it to support the channel, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of my new videos.